This is Michael Strong with When School's Not Working, where every week we bring to you interesting people with interesting experiences outside of the standard educational system. I'm the founder of the Socratic Experience, where we help you develop your child's unique genius. And I'm here with Matt Barnes, one of my co-hosts.
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm Matt, and I imagine a world where successful education is defined not by grades or SAT scores, but by a curious learner who knows how to solve problems and is prepared for the future. That is how I define success, and I work with parents to try to help that happen. So, Kath, you're up next.
Thanks, Matt. Yes, I'm Catherine Frase, the founder of Workspace Education and 100 Roads, a research and development organization. And we are helping people reimagine how education can happen, whether it's in person or in a virtual space. And I'm really excited to meet Emma today.
Terrific, thank you. So Emma is actually my niece. And so I will do a little spoiler alert and say that even without school, she has a spectacular life. So I like to frame it in that kind of, provocative way.
Is that possible?
There we go. What? Oh no!
Didn't go to school.
So rather than kind of steal your thunder, I'd love to have you give our audience kind of your education 101, and then what you're doing today. And how do you survive without going to school?
Well, let's see here. I guess my parents always say that you should just be productive, and my schooling is basically, well, what are you doing? Because like for me, I go and volunteer at a lot of different things, or I've interned at a lot of different things that I like and that I'm passionate about. Like I did aquaponics and beekeeping and just random little things, but that counted as my schooling because I was doing something productive. So I could skip out on my usual schoolwork to go do something like that. But right now I have found, I guess, my next passion, which is like social media marketing and management, and just being in that whole realm of things. So I'm working right now as my school.
And how old are you now, Emma?
I am 17.
Amazing.
Right.
And have you ever been to school?
No, I have not. I went to Montessori school for I think kindergarten, if I remember right. And then after that, but that doesn't even count. That was basically just paid babysitting. But that was the only time. I've been homeschooled pretty much my whole life. So.
What does that look like? What is, because I don't actually like the term homeschool because it suggests that we just take school and we put it at home. That's not what happened with you, it sounds like. What did home learning look like for you?
Well, it's changed a lot. I mean, for my parents, I was homeschooled originally because my family really wanted to travel around. So it was important for us that we could move around a lot. So for my parents, it changed a lot. So it started off as like paper books and kind of doing that. And we did online learning. Right now, I'm at an accredited high school online, and that's kind of what I do on top of my work stuff. So, but I've always volunteered or interned or done something along with my regular like schoolwork, but it's not super strict as well. It's not like I have to do this and that, at least now, because I have so many side jobs that I have to be seriously committed to. So
do you feel like you have enough time to do like some of the conventional stuff that will help you on your next steps in on your pathway, and you have time to do all these other things that you love, that you can put your passion into and explore?
I feel like it's definitely a balance for sure that I'm still working out, but yeah, I would like to graduate high school and get that degree. Although now the more I work, the more I realize that it's not super necessary anymore, but I still want to do that.
So what online program are you doing now?
I do a Celis Academy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And they're all pre-recorded videos and tests and stuff like that. So I can do it at my own pace, which is really nice. So it makes it really easy.
Yeah, I'm more interested in what you do outside of that, though. I mean, you mentioned the social media marketing stuff. What does that mean in practice? What are we talking about?
A lot of things. Well, it kind of all started out because I I interned with Joanna Hay Productions. I interned as basically a grip, which is, grunt work, getting coffee, running upstairs and hauling in equipment and stuff like that. But I loved it because it was,
how old were you?
I don't know, maybe that was a while ago, like 2-3 years ago.
Okay.
So it was,
14,
yeah.
15. Yeah.
But I got to know Joanna, who is an incredible woman. She does a lot of really cool documentaries and a lot of projects in the community, because I was really into photography. So I connected with her. And through her, I was kind of sitting as they were shooting the scene, and I ran into Ambi Hay, who was her sister. And this all comes back, I promise. But and I ran into her, and she said, "Oh yeah, I have this huge Instagram following." And I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool." And I looked her up, and I was like, "Hey, you're not doing stories." And I'm like, that's like a brand new thing, and you would get a lot of followers. She's like, "How do you do that?" And I showed her how to do it. It was like maybe 10 minutes. And then I, never thought about it for a year later. And then I get like a phone call like a year later, like, "Hey, this is Ambi. Hey, how are you?" And I'm like, "Hi, okay." But from there, she really wanted to learn how to do Reels and Instagram and how to grow her following and how to make money at it. And that was something that I was like, yeah, that's something that I grew up with and I know how to teach that. And I'm like, that's super easy. I enjoy doing that. So every week I'd meet up and I'd teach her how to make a reel or do a reel and like ways she could grow her following and like different ideas. And from there it grew into like, hey, you really need a website. And I put together a website and then it's like, hey, you know what would be great? Products. Hey. And then it turned into e-commerce and all that jazz, and helped her publish a book. And like through that, I learned an immense amount. I even went to Florida for just a week just to help her work and stuff like that. And I got paid for it. And that was really cool. And I got to collaborate with a lot of people that are just fascinating. And yeah, so from there, I've gotten a lot of contacts from that. So that's why I do social media marketing for I freelance to a company called Foolproof Creative. And I do their social media marketing for a festival called Bourbon on the Banks, which is a 2-day festival in October, 22nd, 23rd, and it's surrounded around bourbon. So I market for them. And then through that, I found podcasting guys. They do bourbon. And they're like, "Hey, you're really good. You want to learn how to podcast?" I'm like, "Sure, that sounds great." So I'm going to intern with them, a paid internship, and learn how to do that. It just keeps going and going. It's just like, I just get to meet so many incredible people, which is like that's really cool.
That's very cool. That is very
That
cool.
is very cool. And like, it's making me think like, why would you want to go to college to do marketing when you can, by 17, have like 2 or 3 years of this amazing experience, and you've got this portfolio that like people would be so happy to have, even leaving college, and you're not even at college age yet.
Right.
Yeah,
that's really special.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions about college, but yeah, for sure, it does make sense. Like right now, I'm working a job that somebody with a degree is trying to apply for, and I have it. You know what I mean? It's not necessary like it used to be, or they thought it would be.
And you have a lot of contacts too. You've really built your social capital, so you could probably get a job anywhere now, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, and that was my parents' like biggest thing is like is my dad just constantly says it's like you work to learn, not to earn. And that is like, obviously, like through interns and volunteering and just meetings and just all the cool stuff I get to do is like, I just learned so much. And like each project, I just bring it back from the last thing I did. Like I did photography out of a passion for so long. And then it just turned into an internship. And then it turned into a job. And then it turned into going to Florida. And then it,
and joy is oozing from you. You can just see how much joy you're getting from this, and that you've really sort of found something right in your, that intersection of what really lights you up. And that is just so beautiful to see, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting. And now I'm looking at it more of like trying to build it into more of a business sense and more of a personal brand kind of deal. I do so many different things. It's hard to like bundle it all up and sell it to somebody, but I'm working on that.
Yeah, that what you're Michael, looks like Kath and I are going to take over this interview.
Yeah, I'm
so-
sorry about
That's
that.
okay. I
I'm
know the story
captivated.
pretty well, but I'd love to hear you guys extract it from her.
Yeah. So this reminds me that at 17, what the world normally looks at a 17-year-old as is someone who is not ready to really enter the world of work in the adult world. And really, you're not an adult. That's how the world looks at it. But everything you're describing from 15 or so, 14 or 15 on, was you building the skills of adult work and adult life. And the idea that at 17, you're now going, I'm thinking about myself as personally as a business is 10 years ahead of what most young people are. And it's not because young people aren't capable, it's because they're not put in positions to do so. So since I want to hear more about how your parents, you made a couple of comments already about your parents saying they want you to be productive. They want you to work to learn, not to earn. Tell me more about what is influencing them. What is their vision for you? How do you all interact? Give me some sense about how this works.
Okay, well, this is just gonna me bragging about my parents for like 5 minutes, but here we go. Like,
Okay.
it's all, I mean, honestly, I don't know exactly when you're born how much personality comes out of you naturally, but a lot of it comes from my parents. They're both just powerhouse of people. The four of us, we say like we're the power four, because we just, everywhere we go, we just decided to change the whole town. But yeah, so my dad is, he's done real estate for a really long time. It was kind of a rags to riches kind of story. And I remember that, and I grew up with that. And he reads, all the Robert Kiyosaki books, and, he gives them to me and I read them, and, and I've learned a lot from him and that side of things. And, I'll definitely probably get into real estate because of him. And my mom is she is a stay-at-home teacher, but now she's just so involved in the community. So she's run for city commission before. She's she's on a board. She is the president of Bourbon on the Banks Festival.
Oh,
she is
cool.
that lady. And
Yeah.
she is just insane. Oh my gosh. But her connections to people and getting stuff done, it is insane. And I drive to be have her kind of energy and lack of procrastination to do that. She woke up at 4 a.m. to write an email. She's like, I forgot to do that. I'm like, woman, please go to sleep. But yeah, they're pretty insane.
Yeah. So were they training you for this moment, this entrepreneurial kind of endeavor, or were they letting you decide how you wanted to operate?
Yeah, well, it was always kind of I was always pretty proactive, really proactive. I used to be a really annoying neighbor because I used to go to my neighbor's house, and anytime I got it's like a nonprofit that gives animals to different countries, and I would get the pamphlet. I'm like, oh, this needs to be done. So I'd go to all my neighbors' house and ask them to donate, or I'd sell them stuff. And I was that kid. So I don't know. I think they always were just yeah, just do what you want to do. So they were always well, volunteer, intern, or do something like that. But I got to choose whatever it was. And it was also good for me because I also didn't want to sit here and do an English essay. So I was like, you know what? I would rather hang out with dogs all day than do this.
Right.
So
Emma, you talked about you being the Fab Four. So you have a sibling, it sounds like. So
yes.
Are they as proactive as you are?
My brother is very, he's a little antisocial, but he's super duper smart, which is kind of annoying because he's my younger brother. So that gets frustrating sometimes. But yeah, he's really smart and he comes up with a lot of ideas. And I he's a really good person to bounce ideas off of. He'll be big one day, but it'll be very quiet.
Yeah. So he's at school. Is he doing Acellus as well, or how is he doing?
Yes, he's doing Acellus as well, and he's focusing entirely on school because he wants to graduate early. So that's what he's doing. Is he's focusing his entire. So he'll do double the amount of work that usually you would do.
Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting too. I mean, that's an opportunity for him. If he wants to go that path, he can choose to do so. I've not heard of Acellus Academy. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that's involved?
Yeah. I don't know. It's the first online school that has really worked for me. Now, I'm gonna sound like an ad for Acellus, but it is really good. And it is like it's nice. The videos are really short and the quizzes are really short, and you don't have to watch an hour-long video and then remember everything. It's kind of like you watch the 5-10 minute video and then they ask you 5 questions and you keep going over and over again. And it's really good for that. And it's nice because you get credits for it, because it's an actual like brick and mortar high school, but they did a whole other separate online academy. So that's really nice. And honestly, I've suggested it to a lot of my other homeschooled friends because it works for them as well. So
yeah, it's an accredited online school that's quite popular with homeschoolers.
What percentage of the time for the last 2 years would you say you've spent doing schoolwork versus other things? Like, is it 5%, 20%, 90%?
Yeah, like I started off doing more school than I did actual like volunteering. And then now, like right now, especially with all of my work stuff, kind of that high point, I've been like basically focusing entirely on all of my work and my internships and my connections and all that jazz. So yeah, and it varies though. So like when this dies down, I'll probably dive right back into my schoolwork. And that's what's so nice about it as well.
Yeah. Depending on what's going on in your life, you can adjust it.
Yeah. And plus, again, because my parents really wanted us homeschooled so we could travel a lot. So like what I do can be entirely taken with me on this laptop, which is incredible. So I can do my school, I can do my work and everything on a laptop. So I can do it from anywhere, which is very appealing to me.
Yeah, so you said you had a lot of opinions on college, and I'm just wondering, given that you're doing so much other stuff and real world work, and you've got your whole life going on, which is awesome. I'm wondering if you're thinking that the timeline that traditionally schools set for 17, 18-year-olds, to do that transition to college, if you feel any pressure at all to go to college with your peers, or are you, or how are you feeling about that in general?
Ooh, we get to talk about this. Yay. Well, so I guess it's interesting because a lot of my friends, their parents it's the same mentality of, I want what's best for my child, and the best thing for them to do is to go to college. That's kind of the boom, boom, boom. But that is one difference, is that my parents, especially my dad, has never enforced the idea that you should go to college. Unless, obviously, if you're going to become a doctor or a lawyer, you need a paper for that. I get that. But for something that you don't need a degree for, college is just not worth it at all. And a lot of people that I've talked to that are my age, a lot of them it comes down to like, the ones that are not going for degrees that they need. It's more of like, well, it's an experience. Like, yeah, but it's a $24,000 a semester experience. That's not a great reason. But yeah, I don't think it's useful at all. A lot of people still have the mindset, and when I mean people, I mean older generations, have the mindset that you have to go to college to get a job, which is not true anymore. In fact, there's a majority of students that are coming out with like an average of, what was it, like $33,000 in debt, and they're coming out of college for jobs that aren't available. It's a massive, so like, I'm looking up to my millennial generation over here and how they're dealing with it. And it just seems obvious for me not to go. So.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And I hear you 100% about, where you're heading somewhat, right? You know the direction. Doesn't sound like you're interested in becoming a doctor. Maybe, but I'll bet you if you decided you wanted to be, you would know how to do all the learning necessary in order to make that happen. But in this current space that you're in, which is more in the creative side, the idea of a college experience is there's an opportunity cost of just the time that you spend. You won't be getting the type of exposure and opportunity to learn as you're doing now if you're at a university, and you're paying money out of pocket as well, or going into debt.
Yeah, well, and it's also, if you think about it from my situation, if I go to college for minimum of 4 years, right, I mean, I pretty much lose contact with pretty much everybody that I've met.
That's
You know,
right.
I can't just call them 4 years later, like, hey, I'm out and I'm better than ever. And they're like, no, I don't know you anymore. You've changed.
Well,
So, yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's just not, it's not worth it. Not
But
worth
do
it.
you see it like you? It's so funny that you say that. It's almost like you're in a holding pattern away from the real world in a college situation. But you know, I'm quite interested from the angle that, you know, I homeschooled my children, and they when my daughter went to college, she was quite excited to actually be not a homeschooler anymore, or have the kind of experience that everyone else seems to be having when you're homeschooling. Like, you know, she didn't do the traditional, you know, prom in a high school. She hadn't been with, you know, all these boys, you know, where all the other kids were, right? And she was excited to be in an actual place where peers were, and she wanted to be part of what was normal. You know, and I'm just wondering if you had any feelings like that.
Yeah, no, I totally get that though. I wanted to go to college for like the longest time because I felt like, you know, it's one thing to be homeschooled for your whole life, and then college just kind of make up for like a little bit more normal of an education. But yeah, and it's still, I mean, it's still appealing to me in the way of like, it gives me something to do. You know what I mean? It also adjusts me well, which is that's a huge difference. It's hard for a lot of kids to just go from living in the house with mom and dad that does laundry and feeds and stocks the fridge and it's awesome, it's great, to like out in the world, you gotta pay like $1,500 for rent and it sucks. And you know, that's a hard difference. That's why we have dorms. It's the adjustment, right?
Transition.
Yeah, the transition.
It's the transition. And it, you know, that's really appealing because when I'm 18, you know, I don't know what exactly I'm doing, right? I have a general idea and it's changed quite a lot. And college kind of gives you a guarantee, right? Gives you a whole schedule for 4
like
years to figure out what you want to do. So yeah, no, I totally get why people want to go. But yeah, it just, even though that's appealing and I'd be like, oh, that's so nice. I don't have to plan anything. Got the whole thing going on there. But it's just like in the long run, it's just setting me up for failure, especially if I, you know, come out of it with college student loan debt, you know, which obviously I'd probably go like community college or get a scholarship or do something where I wouldn't be in that position. But it still doesn't make very much sense for me personally.
So question then. So do you imagine any formal coursework that could accelerate your skills in your future?
You mean like
taking a course at you know, at the community college, or if you wanted to move into more animation, maybe taking some courses that might accelerate that, or are you really in the space that you can learn everything on your own, you think?
Oh, wow. That's tricky because I think that you can pretty much learn anything from everyone. So, I mean, taking a course in a class, and that sounds awesome. You know, I'm just eager to have that opportunity to even, you know, have that kind of thing. But I'm a strong believer in YouTube University. And I literally, anytime anyone has a question, I'm like, just look it up. Like the fact that people say that, oh, I don't know how to do this, is like the lamest excuse. Dude, you live with the internet, man. Like you can look up anything. That's all I've ever learned is pretty much through YouTube. I mean, that's it. There you go. Either it's work or it's school. YouTube has you. There's someone there explaining you algebra right there. And it's nice too, because people I feel like completely underestimate YouTube as a platform, because especially if you have like, let's say you're trying to learn a certain problem, right? And then you have like 50 people that all made a video explain the one, you know, problem. If they explain it to you and you don't connect to that at all, you're like, I don't understand this at all. You click on the next one and that person connects with you and they explain it in a way, you know? So it depends on what I would do. You know, I think YouTube and the internet can take you really far, and internships as well. Like I find that working like on the job is really the best way for me to learn. Yeah, for me, that's the best way.
Yeah, I was talking to my son last night, who's 18, and he really wants to get into voice acting. And you know,
That's
I'm
so
like,
cool.
well, have you looked into colleges? And we're looking at different programs. And then we worked out that the best stuff that we can find is actually on Masterclass. is on Skillshare, is on Udemy, right? And all these things are like under like $19 a month or $39 a month. So the idea of paying $3,500 for a course in voice acting by some professor just really doesn't make sense anymore. Really and that is just, it's just one of the things he wants to learn. So there's so many different ways to learn now. And I think you just nailed it with that YouTube. Like you can find people you connect with. And all the research says that you learn so much more when it is with someone that you connect with.
Yeah, and especially like I love Masterclass. I love Udemy. I don't, again, like generally all of it I can find for free. But yeah, it's really cool. I was going to say something and I forgot what it was. Oh, and also specifically for me, if I were to go to college, the things I'm interested in are business and marketing, which you don't need a degree in. And as well, most of those courses are not up to date. They're not very thorough. Like the majority of marketing students have claimed that the information was too vague. And the business students, you know, you don't learn how to start a business through going to a business class in college. Like in my mind, the way I think of it is like, if somebody is teaching at a college of how to start a business, okay, but why aren't you know, you're supposed to be making millions here and you're teaching me? That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I don't know.
And you can join an incubator pretty easily now. Like there's so many different incubators and more coming up for teens. So if you want to be part of other teens who are incubating their businesses, that's now possible.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about networking. You mentioned one of the reasons that people go to college is because of the experience, right? I want to have the college experience and I don't mind paying $30,000 a year to do so. But one of the other major arguments is that I build a network at the university that then will accelerate me when I leave. Tell me more about how you built these networks, the people that you're meeting, how you meet them, how do you maintain a relationship with them? Do you have a process? Give me some sense about that.
Yeah, well, you make it kind of sound like I'm a soulless person that only goes it for the business, but. Well,
let me pause because networking has a bad rap in my view. So to me, networking is just building contacts and building relationships and letting people know who you are so that if they need your help, then they have the opportunity. So maybe there's a better term than networking, but I don't mean to suggest that, you know, that people who are networking are only out to, you know, to manipulate and to find opportunities.
Yeah,
right?
I was kidding.
Okay,
but,
just making sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Generally, I meet a lot of really fascinating people and I like to talk as well. So this is why it's great, this interview, man. I get to get it all out. But yeah, I like to talk to people and that definitely helps. But it's also interesting because I get to learn something from them and I meet a lot of cool people. And if I can help them, that's the biggest thing is I was like, oh, well, what do? You know, it's something kind of out of podcasting. Oh, I do podcasting. Oh, well, that's so cool. What do you do for social media? Do you have a website? That's super cool. Do you have merch? This is awesome. And it's kind of like, I don't know. It just comes really naturally for me. But you're saying networking from colleges, because that's what a lot of people say is that when you go to college, you make a lot of connections, which is, I would say that's pretty true. I think so. Like I interned at college for aquaponics and I worked with tons of really interesting people. You know, it's weird though, I actually connected to the photographer dude out of the whole experience the most. That's when I knew that, you know, fish and plants weren't for me. But I don't know, I guess.
So, but I think you said it, which is you're curious and you ask questions and you talk to people. Again, those are skills. Those are adult skills. And so by staying curious, you learn that aquaponics was not actually what you love to do. It was actually more about on the creative, on the artistic side. So to me, that's a real danger. Back to college for a moment, a real danger of going to a college when you really don't know what you don't know. And so you go to college. I think I want to be interested. I think I want to study engineering. I'm going to invest all this time and capital and treasure. And then I jump into the engineering world and realize this is not what I want to do. That's very common. And so you're getting the opportunity to explore that now. And if you I'm sure if you decided you wanted to go into something like that required a degree, you'd do so, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I've tried a lot of things. Like, I'm sure I could write like a 2-page like thing of just all the things that I've tried. Like, I've
That's
done
awesome.
a lot of just oddball things to just figure out what I want to do. And that's kind of, in college, that's what you're kind of supposed to do, right? If you go in for one major, you're going to statistically change your major like once or twice, because the whole idea of college is that you're there, you're surrounded by tons of other people that you wouldn't usually be surrounded with. And then, you know, through that, you connect and you try and figure out what you actually want to do, hopefully by the time you graduate. But I've kind of already got an opportunity to do that, so it doesn't work for me. But yeah, so I've tried a lot of things.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
really,
Matt.
that's no, I was just going to say that's really, really helpful that you have tried those things, because there's something, the only thing worse than not knowing what you want to do is choosing something because you think it's what you want to do, and then you invest all your time and realize later that's not what you want to do. So you've shortcutted that deal, and that's really powerful.
Yeah, or especially I feel like there's also a lot of students that kind of, they pick a job because it has a high paying paycheck as well, instead of just finding something that you like to do and then make it profitable, kind of swap it around. But yeah, there's a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, bingo.
So I'm really interested in your journey, Emma. I mean, you're just fascinating. You're fascinating to me.
Thank you.
And you've done so many things. And I'm just wondering, is there a thread in all these things that you've done? Like, is there kind of like a thing, a role that you kind of take on, that no matter what job you're doing, you're that person in that group of people doing that kind of thing? Or was it always the same, or is that something that sort of evolved through all this trial and error?
I don't know. I will say, if I got your question right, I've tried a lot of things, but one thing that I've always kind of really stuck with is that I'm a really good salesperson. I don't know if that's what you're asking, but I've everything that I've kind of done, I've always like tried to improve it in a way, which is interesting because I work with a lot of older people who want to keep it the same all the time. So anytime I'm volunteering or I'm at an internship and, you know, we're like, oh yeah, you know, we got this. I'm like, you know, it'd be really cool is if we held something here, like a community thing to get volunteers here. Wouldn't that be great? They're like, oh, that takes a lot of planning. I'm like, yeah, but like, think of the outcome, or, you know.
Right. So I'm seeing you're finding the little node that will have the most impact that an organization or a group can do. And that's adding a ton of value to all these different places that you're working with. And that's a really great skill that you've been developing during doing this. You're becoming really valuable to different groups of people.
Yeah, well, and I work with a lot of nonprofits, and, you know, nonprofits have always kind of had a hard time, especially getting consistent volunteers, and they have to rely on grants, and like really like trying to find a way for them to, you know, create their own business in a sense and keep them going. And it's just like those ideas that just keep going.
You know, sales. You mentioned that you're good at sales. There was there's a great book I read called To Sell is Human. And it really unpacked the idea that every time you open your mouth, you are selling an idea, a concept. You're talking to your wife or your spouse about, you know, should we go to the, you know, one place or not? It's a constant skill. And in fact, there's a gentleman that we both know. His name is Michael. His last name is Strong. And he talks about the importance of sales as a superpower. You sell yourself every time you're talking to someone. You do, and I, having interacted with you for this, 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes, I can tell that you know how to sell yourself. That then can carry you in enormous ways across your lifespan. So that is a wonderfully powerful skill, and it's undervalued in the majority of academic settings.
Yeah, I think so. Well, and I agree with what you're saying. I mean, anything that whenever you're having a conversation, you're always going to be kind of biased, you're like, oh, you want to go to Chili's or Taco Bell? Taco Bell has a sale of some kind, or,
That's right.
Chili's, we could go to Chili's, or ooh, we could go to Taco Bell, like whatever it is, you always got some bias of some kind.
It's always Taco Bell, by the way, for me.
Man, Chili's. What are you talking about?
So yeah. I want to kind of, so one of the things in the background of my mind all the time is, so I think, Emma, you are doing extraordinary things. I think it's wonderful. And I think of it as cultural capital that was kind of transmitted from your parents. And I would speculate that if you had precisely 0 formal schooling, you would be pretty much the same person you are right now. That is that most of, all the characteristics that Matt and Kath have been asking you about, oh, I learned that in the 7th grade curriculum. No, I learned that by going out and doing things and talking to people. And so, I think of social mobility, and, Matt, has been with nonprofits and big foundations, and Matt has spent, play with it, Matt, but you've spent a lot of other people's money on making the world a better place.
$500 million.
Exactly. And so for me, it all comes down to people think it's school. No, it's cultural capital. And if we could help millions of kids have the same kind of cultural capital that Emma has, they don't need any school, they don't need any university. The whole school system to me seems like this parallel universe that people believe in. It's almost like this, I don't know, I think it's this weird superstition. Belief in schooling and university is a superstition as far as I'm concerned. And if we understand that, no, certainly, again, for doctors, mathematicians, it's great. So that's maybe 20 to 30% of the population at most. But for like 70% of the population, it's really cultural capital. And so I'm kind of wondering, does that resonate for you, Emma, that a lot of what you got was somehow cultural capital from your parents rather than lessons online?
My parents, they do quite a lot, and they read a lot, and they watch documentaries, and everything that they do is pretty much, I'm eating dinner with them. Like, they're pretty good teachers to have, I guess, is the best answer.
Well, and just to call out another specific one, you mentioned you didn't use the term opportunity cost, but really you were talking about the opportunity cost of college. Most people think, oh yeah, college, there's a dollar cost, but there's also the, oh, I'm going to basically quit developing my networks. And if we, I don't know how much you're going to earn over the next 4 years, but if you looked at how much you would earn and build your career and kind of advance your career versus going to college is more than the dollar cost. It's also those 4 years of lack of opportunity, so to speak. And if you start calculating it like that, it becomes a really big loss. And, I've heard college just, when we talk about how expensive it is, some people says, well, if you compare it to like Coachella, if you compare it to music festival, it's kind of a cheap 4-year party. So if what you're going for is a 4-year party, it's a pretty affordable 4-year party. But I don't think most parents, less alone, the establishment, realizes, these kids that don't know what they're going to do, let's send them to a 4-year Coachella at the taxpayer's expense. No. So, maybe kind of going back to your social life, do you have a strategy for your social life for the next 4 years, or do you think at some point it'll be lonely when you're 22 and you'll dive into college, or you have the perfect networks for the next 4 years? Talk a little bit about the dream social life for the next 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good question. That was another thing that I was really thinking about, is that that'd be great to actually meet a lot of people my age. I meet a lot of people, and a lot of really fascinating people, but all of them are not my age. So yeah, I don't know. I guess like right now, I've been homeschooled my whole life, right? So my only classmate is my brother, as sad as that is. But so yeah, if I want to like meet people my age, I have to go and join clubs or do something where I'm out there, right? Which a lot of my friends, like, I've met through volunteer gigs, or I went to camp like years ago and I got 2 friends from that, and they're buddies forever. I don't know. I guess social planning. Me and my friend would love to be roommates someday. So that's the plan, me and my best friend.
You use another term that I picked up on, which is this question of planning. And yes, so my daughters are, their learning is self-directed, and they struggle a little bit with finding people their own age, just like you're describing, but they have to build a plan about it. They have to have a strategy about how am I going to now connect with people. We just had a conversation with one of my daughters about this last week, like creating the plan, because that's what adults have to do. We have to actually create a plan of who we have to decide who are the people we want to spend time with. And we have to be intentional about reaching out to them, inviting them to places. In a school setting, it's on complete autopilot. And so you're just, again, you're learning skills that are adult skills, and you're learning them in your teens.
Well, I mean, not to call anybody out, but also like, I know this is weird, but adults have a lot of acquaintances, but I wouldn't say that adults have very many best friends. You don't have any besties. What's going on, guys?
Very good point.
But,
very good point.
Yeah.
A lot of associates is what I call them. So social associates.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a bit orthogonal, but talk a little bit about real estate. And, you know, you mentioned your dad is heavily into real estate. What do you see as your real estate pathway? Or have you thought about that at all? Or what does that look like?
In fact, I'm very much into real estate. Not right now, that's not my focus, clearly. I got a lot of things going on. But real estate, I really, you know, from him, I might be a little biased, but from him and reading a lot of books, like oh my gosh, what is it called? It's like the holy Bible of entrepreneurship. Where is it? Oh, I don't remember what it's called either. Oh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that book.
Oh,
that's the best.
Kiyosaki.
Kiyosaki. You know, I don't know some of his political opinions. I don't mess with that, but his books are good. But yeah, so I've read a lot of those books, and basically I always knew that real estate wasn't exactly my passion. I really like fixing things up and taking photos of them and making them pretty, you know. But so I always really wanted to do like video editing or something like that. And then I always considered like real estate on the back burner is what my mindset was. So now what I really want, like the goal would be, is that real estate would be kind of my safety net. You know, it's a consistent income of cash flow, you know, it's a guaranteed $300 a month, and I can have all the real estate on the side and still have my own business going on. So you know, both are fine. You know, like for my social media stuff, I kind of know what I'm doing, but it's going to take a bit to get it together and to see consistent numbers, right? So I really want to get into real estate soon. And I've started prepping for that as well, because I realized that, you know, time goes a lot faster than I want it to. And I'm starting to like get ready to buy a building and stuff like that. So
wow, nice.
Yeah.
So oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say my dad and I partnered on a house that I purchased it with him, and I sold that. But I feel like that doesn't count because I didn't do it on my own. But yeah, and I did that, which is like the first step into real estate kind of deal. Yeah.
You know, that's just another apprenticeship. It sounds like it just happened to be your dad that you were working on that with. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're earning money, how are you thinking about the money? I mean, are you getting coaching around how to invest it or what to do with it? Another hugely important skill that most young people don't learn until way too late. Are you being, you don't have to give me details, of course, but how are you?
This is my quota for the year. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. See, I feel like I definitely could be better with like the amount of money that I have, but I've been doing like businesses since I was like 10, and I feel like that's bragging. I'm like, oh, I'm a genius, but like just weird little projects, and I never spent my money. So I have a lot of cash. No, actually, I don't know. I have a lot of things, and I feel like I should just be, you know, investing it into something. Like, for example, right now, the economy was crazy, and my stock from when I was a child, like baby hospital money, went up, and I got that chunk of money, and that's going into my real estate in the future. That is my goal. Yeah. So I have all this cash that I want to. It's so weird to talk about money. I usually I'm really comfortable, but it's being live streamed, so I'm weird about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll save you from that. But the point I was trying to bring up was that when you earn money, it has more weight because you had to sweat to earn that money, and therefore the reason you're likely to save it is because you know how much it took to earn it. And the reason that you're not going to go and burn it on a new, sports car, or likely, is because you realize that money now can multiply. And those, again, are skills that unfortunately most young people don't learn ever, even in their old age.
Yeah. I mean, like I worked today, freelancing and stuff. I worked for 3 hours. I made $50 and I spent 10 of it on a coffee and cookie for my brother. Like that's not fair, and I realized that that's definitely, that's not the way to go. Yeah. I'm doing this now so that eventually I can outsource it and I can build it into something where eventually I don't have to do that work. That's what's nice about real estate, is it's a little bit more
passive. People
have done it over and over again, which that's an excuse. YouTube has definitely helped me a lot in trying to figure out my whole social media ideas, but yeah.
Very cool.
Well,
Very
I don't know about you, Matt, but I'd give her a job.
Oh, sure. Well, and again, she has sold us, right? She hasn't ever once said, here's what I can do for you, but the way she operates, the way she thinks, the way she answers questions, that's all a form of selling. She's just communicating what's on her heart and what she's about. And I'm sold. I don't think I could afford her, though.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain orientation to the world. And if we can help more people to have this orientation, yeah, I have zero concern about your future, Emma. I think, obviously, relationships are always challenging, and, you'll have clients that, you're angry at, and, life has bumps in it. But will you be as successful as you want to be? Done. I figure it's done already, and without any further schooling. And so, yeah, I think teasing these things out and also sharing them. I think it's great that you're on this show and you're talking about how you think and what you do and things that are natural for you. But I think all of us have seen kids that are just so passive. Actually, you may not want to throw kids under the bus, but do you know what I mean about sometimes kids that go to regular schools seem kind of passive, or at least somewhere out there's some kids that seem more passive than you?
Well, I mean, it's definitely easier to, get good grades. And I mean, not easy to get good grades, but yeah, I mean, the public school system does not make it easy for you to go out of your way and get an internship or volunteer. I have a friend who is an incredible baker, and she makes these insane cakes, like incredible cakes. And I'm like, why don't you work for, we have a bakery downtown. I'm like, why don't you work for them? I'm like, that would be so cool. I'm like, she would hire you in an instant, or even intern. I'm like, just please do something with your talents. But she goes to school and then she works a job afterwards. And then she has hours of homework that she has to do.
Right.
And then if she wants to hang out with friends, I mean, that's impossible unless it's on a weekend when her parents don't have plans, which is rare, right? So, I mean, that's not fair. I think one thing that the school system could do to just fix that is make doing an internship easier and count as part of your schooling. Because I think that's the coolest part about doing an internship, is that you meet cool people. And especially if it's something that you're passionate about, you are going to learn it if you want to. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't do this because I got a good grade on it, because I was interested in it and I wanted to do it. So yeah, making that more accessible to public schoolers is probably the best option. So yeah.
And what advice would you give parents? Like, if they have a go-getter as a teen and the teen is kind of a little bit stuck in the school system, what would you tell parents?
I don't know. Well, I'm not a parent, and I'm also 17, so I don't know how well my advice goes. But I don't know. I mean, my parents always kind of just were encouraging that I was going to do something. You know what I mean? Like, whatever project it was, I tried a lot of things, and they let me quit those things, when I was like, this isn't my project. I joined soccer for like a couple months, and they didn't force me to continue soccer for 10 years of my life. They're like, yeah, whatever you want to do the next project. Sure. But I spent all my own money on my projects though. So I did not, I wanted to do beekeeping. I had to pay for the equipment. I wanted to do photography. I had to buy my camera. But yeah,
so action. You'd say keep your kids doing stuff, right? You're very action oriented, and that kind of maybe develops your motivation or your it seems like you have such a facility of trying new things and just diving deep in and just seeing if it's the thing or not. And if it's not, you just let it go. And if it is, you just dive a little bit deeper, but you're getting all these skills that you can transfer to the next thing. And you're becoming like this master learner where you can learn anything, right?
Yeah, well, and I don't
you can learn it quickly.
Everything, but yeah, and it's cool too, because, you know, from all of the oddball things that I've done, like I can pretty much talk to like a lot of people because of the random things that we do. Like, I mean, it's just weird. Like, just somebody was just talking, they're like, oh yeah, you know, I just sewed this sweater, and I was like, oh, you sew? And I'm like, and I just keep going, because I'm like, the more I know about, the more I can talk to people and ask them questions. It's just cool. I love it.
I gotta ask you, you made a side conversation or side comment around, if you wanted to do the beekeeping, you had to pay for something, your supplies, and if you wanted to get into photography, you had to buy the camera. Your parents had the resources to just pay for that, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
So tell me more about that philosophy, because again, most parents, the dominant logic is, if we have the resources, then we should give it to the child if they're curious about something. They don't sound like they're buying into that.
Yeah.
Yes or
sort
no?
of. I mean, I wouldn't say it went for all things. Like, a good example that would relate to a lot of people is a lemonade stand. I had to pay for all of my supplies and the cups and the lemonade and the actual lemons and the decorations and everything I wanted. I had to pay for it, you know, and I kept track of that. But also my parents are very, like, you know, they're very passionate go-getter, and I had this very elaborate lemonade stand that my parents had built, and they were just so proud of it. And they're like, look at, like, it was insane. Like, it was almost like, it was like go to an urban restaurant lemonade stand. And I pulled it up to the corner every day, and, you know, I sold it. But yeah, because it didn't make sense for me to just take their money. And that's why I was so, like, mad when I learned about, like, the Girl Scout cookies. I was so frustrated because I found out, because it was it was when we didn't have a whole lot of money. And like, I was like, you know, I'm not going to win my, like, 5 markers with, you know, my character on them if I don't sell 100 more boxes of cookies. I'm like, why can't we just get more cookies? She's like, well, you have to pay for the cookies. And I'm like, I have to pay for the cookies, but I'm selling them and I'm giving the money back to them. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. So it literally, I was like, what the heck? And I couldn't ever sell that many cookies because we didn't have the money to buy more boxes.
Buy them on the front
so
end.
The whole Girl Scouts thing, really mad. I've heard they've gotten a lot better, by the way. I'm not dissing on Girl Scouts. I have a friend that goes international places because of Girl Scouts. I was just saying that was disappointing.
The wrong message.
Yeah, it was the wrong message, and I really didn't like that. And it just gave I feel like it gave kids, like, a total self, or like, it didn't work. It didn't work.
It's not teaching them, again, it's not teaching them a life skill. It's so that's I didn't know that about that program, but interesting. Well, for those parents that may be listening, the idea of at times saying, hey, you're interested in this, you now have to raise the money to actually pay for the equipment, or we'll split it with you. We'll half and half. This is something that I've done with my kids, so that they start to learn that if there's something they want, they have to work for it on the front end in order to get it. So those are some good lessons I think your parents taught you.
Yeah.
So we should wind down and have the official Matt question and the Kath question. So at the end, we have these short questions from each of them. So Kath, you want to give her your Kath question?
Yeah, I always talk about infrastructure and what people who are not at school might have needed. And, you know, I remember that you said that, you know, you needed places to meet other kids your age. So what sort of things should exist so people who are not in the conventional school system can meet kids their age? You know, just in town or nearby where you live.
Well, I also live in a pretty small town where we don't have a whole lot of, like, organized school things. Like, we don't have a debate club because people just stopped showing up to debate club, and then they just didn't fund it at all. So I guess that's hard to say. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, like, the way that I've met people is generally just like I co-founded a students climate action group. And like from that, I meet a lot of really fascinating people with the same interest as me. That's that's a nice thing about clubs, and that's for adults and kids, right? Like you go to a wine tasting to meet more people that drink wine.
Wine, yeah.
Or at least just talk to people.
Right.
So yeah, and I had a photography club, and photography is not my main focus, but it's still a club that people show up every week and we just hang out. So I don't know. I guess there's no set
So all
way.
your needs were met. So that's
yeah, I don't know. I guess clubs and yeah. Oh, and it would be great if schools worked more with the community as well. Like if they went out and they did like certain things. Like if band went out and did like a little concert for just the town or something like that. Just getting the schools involved with the community in any way, I feel like is also a pretty good thing. But I don't know. I don't have an exact answer.
Well, you just answered the question I was going to ask. So that was great. Good for you.
Sweet. Thank you. You guys are so nice, by the way. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm on top of the world.
Well, it's great to meet.
You're done with your question then? That was your question?
Yes.
Okay. No, Emma, it is fantastic. You're an inspiration with audience to everybody who watches. I was going to say for millions, but we don't yet have an audience of millions. But when we do, that's right. This will become famous, and you will be the 17-year-old who told the world about a wonderful pathway without schooling in the traditional sense. So thank you. Thanks for joining us, Emma. And this is Michael Strong from When School's Not Working, founder of the Socratic Experience. Join us next week for another fascinating guest. Thanks, you guys. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Care.
Bye. Thanks, Emma.
Bye.
Bye. You were awesome.